This is a meeting of the Town of Bolton Select Board. We are thrilled to be joined this evening by our state senator, Robin Kennedy. I think possibly somebody from Representative Hogan's office may also be joining us. But we thought we'd take this opportunity to just get some legislative updates from Senator Kennedy and her team. I think Kate and I may have some questions or comments, and I'd also invite anybody else to raise their hand if they had anything that they wanted to ask. But first, welcome, Senator Kennedy. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, certainly Brian and Kate and the entire administrative team from Bolton. I actually had a wonderfully, beautifully day today, bookended by time with Bolton. Speaker Pro Tem Hogan had her annual farm tour, so we were up at Neshoba and Bolton Spring Farms today, this morning, and so great to be joining back with you this evening. So glad to be here.
Thank you. I think it would be great if maybe just from your perspective, you could share out some of the highlights of what the legislature is dealing with right now, and maybe if you wouldn't mind, touch a little bit on the status of discussions around the Municipal Empowerment Act, if you're aware of those.
Yeah, so just in general, I think kind of where the world is at these days and what the legislature is focused on, of course, like everyone here right now, we have our eyes down to DC. Certainly, gravely concerned about the shutdown and the impact as it will continue to linger, and what the impact will be on our budget and decisions we'll be making from there. We started FY26 with a very sound budget. As you may know, we also, one of the decisions that was made in this budget was to hold essentially $800 million of revenue aside, in anticipation of cuts that we will be seeing. And so, the thought was that would be later on, but as later on in the fiscal year, but as the shutdown, depending on how long it continues, will certainly maybe need to use some of those resources sooner rather than later. The good news for most social benefits programs, most programs that constituents rely on do remain or have been allocated for the month of October. So hopefully, before we're talking about November, the government is reopened and we're back to business in DC, but we'll certainly update for to address any community concerns as this does continue. The good news in the budget front is around the Fair Share Amendment, and happy to go a little bit into detail around that. I think since day one or year one, the Fair Share Amendment revenue has exceeded projected numbers or projected by in most groups and individuals, the numbers. And so one of the things we saw in last year in FY25, where we had initially allocated 1.3 billion towards fair share funding, it reached closer to $2 billion. And so this past spring, we were able to do a supplemental fair share budget, where we were able to both increase some of the areas that are of critical concern, including, I know, to communities like Bolton, including things like regional transportation and the special education circuit breaker. So we were able to allocate funding last spring in addition to for those programs. We were also able to fortunately provide some one-time earmark funding for the town of Bolton, including $100,000 for a bridge project and $100,000 to the Neshoba schools for some equipment that they were looking to purchase. We are anticipating that once again this fiscal year, we will be seeing a surplus in the fair share revenue. And so, with no guarantees or commitments, it is very likely that we will see another supplemental budget this spring. So look forward to working with Marie and with the board of other potential, if we have the opportunity to earmark funding, other potential one-time projects that might be necessary that we might be able to allocate. Certainly, as I say that about the fair share funding, certainly as we look ahead to FY27, given the projected cuts that will start to take effect next year from the federal government and over the course of this year. we're not anticipating as good as revenues as we've had certainly this year, but even more so in past years.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm happy to get into some more of the numbers if it's helpful on that. But that's kind of the kind of 30,000 foot view in the world in the budget. Legislatively, we're kind of in a unique position in this moment in time. We're here in Massachusetts. We haven't uh, relinquished our values. We're not going to relinquish our values. We are proudly a state that is continuing to move forward with innovation, with research, with economic development, housing production. And so in those ways, we're going to continue to the best of our ability to continue to move forward. We have the $4.2 billion housing bond bill that's still available. And I will make one note because I think it's important as we talk about budgets coming forward. Massachusetts is right now with an historic $8 billion stabilization fund or rainy day fund, which is great. And we're already hearing calls to tap into that as we know it's certainly raining out these days. Um, that said, we have billions and billions of dollars in the housing bond bill, the economic development bond bill, an IT bond bill and we're soon going to do an environmental bond bill that are all pending, and we are able to bond as high as we do because, in part, of the high level of our stabilization fund. So we're going to have some tough decisions on trade-offs in the months to come in terms of continuing our production of housing, continuing our economic development investments, and also including things like our environmental bond bill, looking at some of the infrastructure needs we have around making sure that our grid is up to date, so that we're able to move to electrification the way we want to. So we have a lot of production we need to do, but we also know that there's going to be a lot of really urgent needs coming that we're going to be looking to try to fill as well. So certainly, we're trying to do our best legislatively to continue to move forward, expand rights for individuals, make our schools state of the art, make our education system state of the art, improve our transportation, including public transportation across the state. But we're also now in a defensive mode legislatively. The Senate president has formed what she's called Response 2025, which is the steering committee, which really is focused on looking at what is happening with the federal government and looking at legislation we need to prioritize to protect our residents and protect those that might choose to come to Massachusetts for the state of our healthcare system we have, and for the all the wonderful reasons why we all choose to be in Massachusetts. Um, we passed, as an example of that, the SHIELD Act, which protects any individual who comes to Massachusetts for reproductive or gender affirming care. It prohibits any provider for sharing that information out of state. So if a attorney general for another state comes looking for that to go after one of their own residents, uh, our providers are prohibited from sharing that information. We also just passed in the Senate, a comprehensive, so it hasn't gone to the House yet, a comprehensive data privacy act. Again, with all the changes that's happening in technology and all of our personal sensitive data that's available in so many ways, in so many places, this bill, the Data Privacy Act, prevents the sale or transfer of any what's deemed sensitive data, which is any of our personal data, address, any information like that. So we're continuing to somewhat play defense as well. Otherwise, we're continuing to move forward with legislation. We have filed Bolton's home rule petition with
I
the
was
liquor
going to ask
licenses.
about
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yes. So that has been filed. We're going to get back to you with the bill number. It hasn't been assigned yet by the clerk, but we'll certainly let you know as soon as it does. And we're working closely with with Rep. Hogan's office as well.
Could you, just in case anybody's watching this after the fact and doesn't understand like what a home rule petition is or that process, could you just briefly explain like the town's role and the legislature's role?
Yeah, so this is unique, and actually, I'll touch on a piece of another area, another bill that's pending that will hopefully be a better way to address this. But right now, statutorily, there's a whole set of issues that towns, in many ways, should be able to decide, but are required to get legislative approval. So things like liquor licenses, things like some, sale of state land, things like that. I know there's another one pending around some decam property. Um, and even though a board will take a vote, even if there's a town meeting vote and approval of an issue like expansion of liquor license, it needs to then come before the legislature for the legislature to then approve. And there, unfortunately, are hundreds and hundreds of these filed because, rightfully so, as businesses are growing, towns want to be able to expand capacity for restaurants and bars to be able to serve alcohol. And so there's hundreds of these types of home rule petitions that get filed each session and throughout the session as this comes up. Um, this one in particular is somewhat unique, where Bolton is somewhat unique, which you actually need to have permission to even be able to file to get an additional liquor license because of some of the rules in Bolton's history. And so but we will file this so that there can be expansion. That said, there is actually a legislation that's pending right now that would transfer the responsibility of liquor license from the state to municipalities,
Mm.
so that that decision is yours to make. You know what is best for your community. Um, so I'm hopeful because I think we're all inundated in the legislature and working with our communities as closely as we do, it seems like a burdensome next additional step that communities have to go through. So I'm signed on to that bill. I'm really hopeful that it'll see its way through. And it just becomes, we have ends up with hundreds at the end of session, which there's no reason that we shouldn't be able to get this done for
Yeah.
municipalities. But with all the bills before us, they just tend to linger.
Well, thank you for your support on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that you had sent there was some questions as well around education funding. So I can tell you what needs to happen, and then we can talk about the what is happening. Um, and I'm on the education committee in the Senate or in the Joint Committee in the legislature, excuse me. And I work very closely with the Senate chair, Senator Jason Lewis. I will say there's a new House chair this year, Ken Gordon, and he's been phenomenal to work with as well. Um, there's what needs to happen is we need to get the Education Reform Commission back up and running. It's supposed to occur every 10 years. It's been 10 years. It was the last one brought us the Student Opportunity Act, which in many ways was incredibly helpful, particularly for urban school districts. But since that time, we know that there are increased pressures on our regional schools, our rural schools. Some of the schools out in Western Mass are really struggling where they're losing enrollment and really can't keep up with capacity. And so minimum aid was increased this past year as a way to address some of that challenge. But we know that across the board, again, special education, circuit breaker funding, regional transportation costs. So we really need to get the Reform Commission up and running. And so I know that the Senate chair, has been championing for that. Our hope was that the Secretary of Education would call for that commission, um, but it quite hasn't happened yet. So that's still something that we would like to see in this year's budget. We did include a piece of the commission which was focused on municipal contribution rates. So there will be a commission forming that's working with the MMA and other, school partner, school associations, the superintendents, et cetera, school committees to be able to have that conversation. But really, we need to see the whole comprehensive focus on all these parts because, part of the struggle as we started to see in the last year, starting in the really FY24, but FY25 and now 26 budgets is the impacts are enormous in every corner of the Commonwealth, regardless of what type of school or school district it is. And so we really need to understand what the gaps look like so that
Hmm.
we can actually get to addressing it.
Hmm.
Um, there are a multitude of bills that have been filed that get at a whole host of those pieces. One of the bills I filed was around addressing the Chapter 70 inflation cap. Another bill I filed was around charter school reimbursement, which would extend the increase the percentage that gets reimbursed to the school district and also extend by an additional year the reimbursement process to school districts. So as more and more charter schools open, um, that school districts remain whole to the best of or as for as long as possible, or close to whole, as is a percentage decreased every year. Um, but really, these are all pieces that should be part of a more comprehensive conversation.
Mhm. Um, just out of curiosity, apart from sort of the funding or financial aspects of the Education Joint Committee's work, are there any like uh hot button issues that the committee is looking at? Like I know at one point there was talk about banning cell phones and like is there talk about AI? Like, I'm just curious, what are some of the other non-financial pieces that are coming up for the committee?
So, and that's a great question. The Senate actually 2 weeks ago, I think 2 weeks ago now, did pass a cell phone ban, and it was a really deep conversation in the Senate, because I think there is a general recognition that cell phones are really harmful to students, particularly in the school day. We see a lot of bullying that's happening, a lot of distraction engaged on their cell phones during the day. Um, that said, we also wanted to balance with, there's many school districts, including some of mine, like some of the Worcester districts, where with a lack of access to equipment, cell phones are used for technological purposes, for educational purposes. And we also heard loud and clear from parents that they want to be able to get in touch with their kids during the day. Now, I will say one of the things that I learned during this process from best practice research, I know the biggest fear was, what if, an emergency or tragedy is occurring and parents want to get in touch with their students. One of the things that research has shown is that it's actually more dangerous for kids to be texting or calling with their parents versus focused on the instructions that they're getting from their educators or from school personnel. And so, that is a flag that was raised, which was an interesting a point that I didn't know before we were engaged in this conversation. That said, the way the Senate bill was passed, each school district will now work with DESE to create their policy.
Mhm.
There's a set of three, and I apologize, I don't have them off the top of my head, three criteria that there must be exemptions for access to phones. So including medical purposes, if they have diabetes or something, you need to track stuff through their phone. If they have an IEP that requires access to their phone, and I apologize, I forget what the third one is. But then the plan also has to include a way for parents to get in touch with their students if there's an urgent matter that they need to reach out to them during the day, a pickup early, an early pickup, or a change in who will be picking up, things like that. There has to be a plan, part of the plan, and the school districts will be able to decide um, how they want to prohibit phones from being accessed. So whether they have a collection box at the beginning of the day, if they have, some school districts are using those pouches that lock and only certain administrators can unlock them. So school districts, depending on their capacity, will be able to make those decisions. And there will be, I very much foresee this will be part of the fair share funding as ways to be able to support school districts as they implement this. Now, that said, the House hasn't taken it up yet, so it's still pending in the legislature. Um,
Great.
what was the other question, the other example you gave?
Oh no, that's great. I mean, like the other one was I said was AI tools, but I don't know if that's coming up yet.
Yeah, there is a whole committee that's focused on emerging technology, including AI, and Senator Michael Moore is the chair of it, and it's something he's been really deeply focused on. And I know the governor is looking at creating or has created a task force around AI. It's something we want to lean into because it's here, it's a reality, but also want to be very careful of how it's going to be impacting all of our lives in a whole multitude of ways. So there is nothing kind of moving in the moment around that, but there's definitely a whole lot of active conversation. There is some, there's legislation, not the education committee, but just in terms of hot button issues, that around prohibiting banning of books, which would impact, all libraries. That's a bill that's on a move and certainly would be related to education, but is not actually didn't go through the education committee. Um, and then like I said, we continue to move forward. We're a state that believes that we want to expand people's rights to make decisions about who they are and their bodies. And so what typically is can be challenging or controversial or hot button at the federal level, and really being rolled back at the federal level. We're continuing to push forward in those conversations here.
Yeah. Thank you. I want to make sure I give Kate a chance to jump in as well. Thank you so much, Senator.
Of course.
So I think it's a little bit, Brian had brought it up at the beginning, but the Municipal Empowerment Act, um, is that something that you're supporting? I think from my perspective, it's something that, there are some local controls that would be helpful for us, that would expand our ability to maybe focus on economic development and just being able to manage the town a little bit better. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I'm sorry I didn't look it up where it stands before I jumped on this call. So I'm certainly happy to email and send just the update on the status of it, and particularly kind of conversations around kind of where folks are feeling around it. But yeah, absolutely. I go back to and I think the cell phone bill is a good example of this. As state legislators, our role is to kind of set policy that could set a baseline across the state. Um, but it really should be on municipalities to make decisions, because Bolton is not Worcester. Worcester is not Boston. Boston is not the Berkshires, and our Commonwealth is so unique, that with unique opportunity challenges. And so I say all that to say, absolutely, I would be supportive. And I think certainly the bill filed by Senator Oliveira around the liquor license in particular is a good example of what would be included, decisions that should be at the local level. Certainly with the state oversight of the ABCC, but not something that requires an extra layer of partisan bureaucracy with the state having to prove it. But I'm happy to get back to you on the actual status of the bill.
And then my other question is, and I had seen this on Representative Hogan's Facebook page, a food truck bill.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we were talking
Actually,
about that earlier.
yeah, it's been a
Um,
topic of discussion on our community Facebook page. Like, why is this so challenging? Why can't we have more food trucks? So can you just explain
yeah.
a little bit what that is and what your position is on it?
No, absolutely, and it's something I'm learning more about. So what the issue is right now every individual board of health needs to approve food trucks for communities within their jurisdiction, which means you could have some food trucks that are approved by the Neshoba Board of Health, but then not approved by the City of Worcester, or vice versa. Which, from what I understand and what I learned a little bit about more this morning, actually, was that it's the number of available food trucks is very restricted in Bolton in particular, within the Neshoba Board of Health, Public Health District. And so, um, to me, again, that's another example of where it might be the opposite of where the state should have a role. If there's a public health baseline of what meets the criteria or what is the approval, that should be the same for all communities. So if your food truck is safe to be in, Boylston, it should be safe to be in Bolton. And so again, sometimes there are ways in which the state should be kind of setting that baseline, or at least setting criteria for what boards of health should be considering when they're going to make sign off on whether something is approved. Because to me, it actually seems kind of concerning, because if a food truck shouldn't be allowed or is prohibited from a certain town, I really don't want to see it in another town, or want to see whatever challenge is addressed before other people are eating their food. So that's certainly my position on that. That would be something that, and it's something that if the act is moving, we could look to consider through an amendment if there's not a bill that's currently pending around that, which I'm not familiar with. But
Yeah, it would just be nice to see that impediment taken off of the food truck owners too, because I think it's
yeah,
an impediment to business, so.
absolutely. And like I said, it just seems really, and I'm curious to start digging in a little bit more, because it seems really um, crazy that, again, it would be allowed in one town but not in another. Like if
Yeah.
it's healthy, it's healthy.
Well, listen, you've been so generous with your time already, Senator. So we wanted to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be here and for your continued advocacy for the town, because I know that there are small things that come up in the life of a municipality that make its way to your desk that the average resident doesn't know about. But we appreciate your partnership and also, of course, Speaker Pro Tem Hogan's as well.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And I really am incredibly fortunate as a senator. I have amazing reps. And from even before I was elected, Speaker Pro Tem Hogan has been an incredible partner. And, you know, in this work and has been incredibly gracious with helping me get to learn about the communities as well. And so I really appreciate all of you. And, you know, as I always say, I'm really proud to be the senator for 6 amazing communities and want to make sure that I'm equitably giving my time and energy to all of my communities. So certainly as funding comes up, as we get, you know, opportunities for supplemental bills or as we get into the next fiscal year, if there's opportunities, we'll certainly be reaching out to make sure that we're supporting the town the best way we can. And I know Kirk and I know all you know how to get in touch with us. So we're certainly always happy to work with you. And it was great to see Jenny and Marie and earlier this morning as we were doing some of the farm tours. So it's really great to be with you all tonight.
Thank
So
you
thank
so
you so
much.
much for having us and look forward to coming back.
Thanks, Senator. And thank you to Giselle as well.
Absolutely.
Have
Have
a
a
good
wonderful conversation.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, and I'm sorry to keep you waiting a few minutes, Pam, but we
No
have
problem.
our town planner, Pamela Harding. Welcome. Thank you for
Hello.
joining us. Hi.
It's nice to be here. So
So,
I'm just here to give you an overview of the planning department. The planning department consists of myself, the town planner. I work 37.5 hours a week, and I'm assisted by our land use administrator, which is a new position that was appointed 2 years ago now. Lauren Ducat, she's invaluable to us. She works 28 hours a week and she splits her time between the planning department and the conservation department. So some of the things that we work on, some you probably know, I'll just review everything kind of on a high level anyway. We staff the planning board. The planning board is responsible for subdivisions, special permits, site plans, scenic bylaws, driveway permits. They're also the governing body for the master plan as well as the housing production plan. So they oversee those plans, make sure they're up to date and filed with the state as required. The board also takes a high initiative in reviewing and updating our zoning bylaw. It can be done in other ways as well, but the planning board is really one of the primary bodies that reviews the bylaw on a consistent basis and proposes updates. We also staff the zoning board of appeals. They review comprehensive permits, which are your 40B developments that you see going on. There are a couple under construction right now. They also conduct hearings for variances, which are applicants that seek relief from requirements of the zoning bylaw. The town of Bolton doesn't allow use variances, but they can award dimensional reliefs. They also hear special permits for expansion or changes of non-conforming uses or buildings that are in town that seek to do alterations or expand. One that they frequently conducted was the Oak and Orchards. So that's located in a residential zoning district. And when they expanded their use, they had to go to the board for a public hearing process. We also staff the Economic Development Commission. Many of you know you were both at Backyard Bolton, I believe. So they host and facilitate those events. Those are done. The Backyard Bolton event is conducted 3 times a year right now. And they try and get local vendors together and host the community event just to promote local businesses, local activities and clubs. They also sponsor the Wreath program and host business gatherings where they try to gather local businesses to conduct networking and get input to see what kind of impediments they've experienced and also anything they can do to enhance businesses that exist within the community. They also try to do some social media outreach and do ribbon cuttings for new businesses that open up in town to make the public aware that they're here and where they can be found and what they are. And one of the major things outside of the boards and committees, well, they're all a part of it, is the master plan implementation phase.
Mhm.
So the planning department plays a pretty large role in going through the implementation strategies that were recommended in the master plan, which was completed almost a year ago now. And one of those goals, I go to each boarding committee with items that were tasked to them, and we have been prioritizing those goals. So at the end of last calendar year, the planning board went through all their assigned items, and we picked a few to implement in the fiscal year 26. And one of those was an analysis of the economic development uses, particularly in the Forbush Mill area. We have a developer who wants to develop an open space a parcel that's vacant, it's not protected open space, at the intersection of 117 and Forbush. So we thought it would be a great opportunity to look at that area and conduct a focused area assessment, the land uses, what the current zoning requires, what's there, and get into what we think would be expansion opportunities for commercial development. And that would also enhance upon the Rotary project that the Department of Public Works is currently has under construction. They're also looking at the mixed use table to evaluate what we allow and where we allow it. To become more expansive, allow additional uses possibly, and be more specific about what is allowed and where. Some of the categories are very broad, so we're trying to narrow that down. So when someone comes into the office and says, can I build a specific use at this location, it's clear, it's not so vague. Because if it's not specified in a use as allowable, it's prohibited basically. So we just want to make sure that we grasp opportunities that come forward to the town. Another one of our goals is the housing production plan. It's actually a unfunded state mandate. Bolton had last completed their housing production plan in 2021. So we'll be working on that now basically. It should start very soon. And that it's a 5-year plan, and examines existing housing and provides recommendations for what Bolton needs moving forward. So I know we've reached our 10% subsidized housing inventory, which is a great achievement, but there are also other gaps in our housing supply which could be satisfied. They don't necessarily have to be affordable housing. So things like housing for seniors, things we can do to promote that type of development, smaller housing units, not just single family homes, and where those units would be appropriate. So all of that would be part of the housing production plan. In addition to that, we participate in other planning projects going on in the town. The open space and recreation plan we're part of, as well as the hazard mitigation plan, and those cover various departments in the town, and we're work with other departments collaboratively to try and achieve those strategies and goals.
Hey, Pam, could I
Yeah.
ask a question about the housing production plan update?
Sure.
I think you had mentioned in the pre-read that you had sent that you're going to try to maybe seek a grant to help support that.
Yes.
What would be the timing for finding out whether we actually get that?
It should be announced this month. We applied, and the announcements are supposed to be made publicly in October.
Okay.
So we should
Okay.
find out any time now.
Okay. I do think it's important though for the community to understand. I think you make a great point that like this requirement that we update our housing production plan, while I can understand its importance, it is an unfunded mandate that the state places on town planners, and it's not the only one that somebody like you has in your role. And so I guess I just want people to understand, like, we sometimes the state imposes these requirements on municipalities, doesn't provide the funding for us to actually fulfill the requirements, and this housing production plan is an example of one of them. And they do take a lot of staff time, right? I mean,
Yes.
there's a lot of there's a lot of data involved. So I hope we get the grant, and I thank you in advance for your work on it.
Oh, sure, of course. Yeah, the open space erect plan's another unfunded state mandate, and the master plan is actually as well, though the town previously did get a very large grant award to contribute towards completion of the master plan. So we do want to make sure all this, there's a lot of effort, as you mentioned, and volunteer times, and people dedicate a lot of effort and thought into these plans. So it's our priority to make sure that these are implemented. And at least evaluated in detail and considered. So that's a huge part of what we do here. So I'm also the floodplain administrator. So we recently updated our floodplain maps and floodplain bylaw at the last town meeting. And we ensure that development complies with floodplain standards, that we can build as much out of a floodplain as we can. There's standards about elevations and things that we have to ensure new construction complies with. We're also, as a town, members of the Assabet Regional Housing Consortium, and that's a 7-community organization where we hire, the town participates in, and we hire Metro West Housing Collaborative, and they act as our technical consultant when needed for affordable housing assistance and advice. They also do quarterly meetings where all the communities get together and share their stories, success stories, and ongoing projects and things that have worked and not worked throughout the region. In addition to that, we obviously participate with our regional planning agency, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, as well as the sub-Magic region, and we get together with them. They offer tech on a monthly basis for Magic. They get to all the communities in the 495 region get together and discuss ongoing planning issues, things that are pending in the legislature, and things communities do to kind of satisfy housing issues, zoning issues, and that type of thing. Magic is also going to be working on economic development opportunities for communities that are more rural inside that don't have access to public water and public sewer. So we're looking forward to participating in that project, and that's supposed to be commencing this fiscal year. So we're waiting to hear when that gets started so we can participate. It's something that we think will be beneficial for Bolton. And also, we manage the annual Green Communities reporting. Bolton's considered a green community, and we are required to report all our energy usage and building information annually to the state. So we get all that input from the various departments and provide it to make sure that we maintain our certification. That's a broad overview of everything, I guess. We also do various grant applications when needed. We recently submitted a LEAP application for a traffic calming study. So we all try to work collaboratively towards projects. Many things may not sit neatly in a department, so we just try and work together to figure out who can best complete certain applications or projects as time allows.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Pam. And I'll just say one of the things, I didn't really know anything at all about planning before I got involved with town stuff, but the number of things that go through the planning department is insane. Like, I don't think people realize how many things touch your desk and your area of expertise. So you're very busy, and thank you for all your hard work.
Well, thank you. Bolton's been great. There's a lot of volunteers that put forth a lot of work and effort into the plans and the work. So it's been a great experience so far.
Yeah, that was a great overview, Pam. I really appreciate it. I think it was good. It was good education for me. I think it was good education for anybody who's watching the meeting, and I think people can have a much finer appreciation for the incredibly hard work that you folks are putting in. So.
Thanks.
And I'll just say, for our part, the select board certainly doesn't want the master plan to go unimplemented, and so I think you may know we have as a goal this year to make sure that we're keeping tabs of the things within the master plan that are our area of responsibility, with a particular focus on some of the more like revenue, economic development type of things. But a lot of hard work went into that plan, so we want to make sure we're taking advantage of it.
And we want to make sure that we benchmark things. The planning department would like to act as a catch-all for that. So when we go to update the plan, we can spend less time kind of getting up to speed as to where things are and make sure things are getting addressed and not overlooked. So benchmarking for both housing production and master plan will be a part of a lot of the department's focus going forward.
That's great. Well, thank you. I know it's late. We don't need to keep you any later, but really excellent overview, and we appreciate you taking the time to do it. Do you have any
no problem
for us, or anything in particular that we could do to support you in your work?
No. I work closely with Marie and all the departments. Really, we all try to touch base about various things. The Board of Health has been advising us a lot as we work on zoning changes, so that's been extremely helpful. And we just all try to kind of collaborate to ensure departments get input, provide input to each other. So it's been a good experience. I don't have many questions.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again.
All right, thank you.
Have a good
Good night.
night.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Take care. Okay, next item on our agenda is related to a request from our fire chief for the disposition of surplus ambulance. And I would invite our town administrator, if you don't mind, to just briefly tee this up for us.
Certainly. I'm seeking the Select Board's declaration of surplus. Folks may have heard about procurement and procurement being very onerous in municipalities. Surplusing or disposition of assets is basically procurement in reverse. The fire chief had contacted me, giving me an update on the ambulance that had been purchased in 2014. This was purchased with the then ambulance receipts reserved for appropriation. He'd stated that having taken the ambulance in for preventative maintenance, the estimated repairs, plus the maintenance, plus the recertification costs, as well as the insurance costs, would be, in his view, outstripping the value. This is an ambulance that, as of 4 years ago, had an estimated trade-in value of approximately $10,000. You may recall in 2021, the chief had proposed to the select board to keep this ambulance as a backup. Subsequently, though, the inside storage that he had hoped for was not available within the public safety building. The ambulance itself had gone out on 3 calls in 2025. Just wanted to be clear, what I'm discussing is not the new ambulance that was purchased in 2021, and it's not the fly car that Bolton had received through the CARES Act, but I seek the board's agreement with my request to dispose of the ambulance. What would happen is then it would just go through the reverse process of trying to get an assessed value. If it is under $10,000, we would be disposing through either, standard intermunicipal purchases. We are also, by virtue of Chapter 30B, Section 15, allowed to dispose for less than fair market value if it is to a charitable organization.
So just to recap, I think some of the key things from the overview you provided was just first, like, this ambulance it was basically kept as a spare or backup, and it's been very little used. Like in this year, it's been used 3 times.
Correct.
And so, how, like, assuming, we vote to surplus this, the chief has the ability to cover whatever use cases might have been needed for this ambulance, right? He's able to
Yes,
cover.
with the fly car. The problem, he could, in order to keep this in service, there would be, in his estimation, significant cost outlay, which net for the utility and the number of calls, and knowing it's going to be kept outside still, is not worth it.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Kate?
Yeah, I just want to be clear if our regular primary ambulance is unavailable because it's getting serviced, what ambulance service is going to be available in Bolton for,
There would be a reliance on the fly car, but in effect, is it worth it for a minimal number of calls to invest approximately $8,000 to $9,000 on a vehicle?
okay, so, but the people of Bolton are not going to notice, there's not going to be a decrease in service for people who have emergency medical needs.
Correct. That was one of the questions that I wanted to clarify with the chief, and I think I'd forwarded that within the correspondence. So,
Yep, I just want to be clear for anybody listening who might be concerned about that.
mhm.
Okay. Well, I don't have any other questions, and thank you to you and the chief for the email correspondence that kind of provided the background.
Do you need a motion on this?
A declaration of surplus would be terrific.
I will make a motion to declare the 2014 ambulance designated 7A hyphen one as surplus.
And I will second that. Roll call. Kate?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes.
Brian, it looked like Jem had a question.
Oh, really? I couldn't actually tell what those emojis were. They were
Yeah,
like,
I had never seen that either. I just wanted to draw your attention to it in case that was a hand raise.
oh, okay, nope, I'm fine. I
Oh,
see
nope,
your
she's fine.
comments. Great. Well, we are coming up almost at 7:50 for public comment, so I'll entertain any public comment at this time if anybody wishes to raise their virtual hand and be recognized for public comment. Okay. Well, Jenny, maybe you can help me keep an eye on whether anybody else joins the meeting after 7:50, but if not, I think people have had their opportunity to make public comment. So we can turn it over to, oh, there we
It
go.
does look like Jem is raising her hand.
I'm
Hi.
sorry. I'm sorry. It took me a while to get the buttons pressed, but I'm wondering, of course, about when's the estimate for the Rotary? Because people are asking. Is it just the telephone poles, and do we have a date for that? That's all. Thank you.
Marie, I think you maybe were going to cover some of that in your town administrator report.
I intend to cover some of that in my town administrator report.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thanks, Jem. So actually, Marie, do you want to just start there and then cover the rest of your report?
Sure, I will. Let me go into sharing screen. All right. Oh, I will get to the roundabout, trust me. But in other questions that I've heard from members of the public, wanted to relay Alton Neshoba is on schedule. There have been some concerns about the formerly licensed parking area around the Tower Field. Had confirmed this week with the representatives that the aeration and seating is currently planned for mid-October. The exact date will be relayed by the contractor. We could even put something up, but individuals are encouraged to contact me, ta@bolton-ma.gov. But that was included in their license agreement. They will be upholding it. For the board's enjoyment, I provided the permit application for the decorative sign that will soon be appearing at the entrance of the high school. This does not require select board approval. It was more for an FYI. Some components of the legislation were addressed earlier tonight, but as of this time, after my conversations with Representative Hogan, there had been no date certain for the next steps of the DCAM, home rule DCAM. On the roundabout, we have no scheduled date from Verizon when they would be moving the wires. There's been a lot of diligent follow-up on the part of the DPW director as well as the contractor. Today, we've been engaged in an ongoing email dialogue, mainly getting confirmation that Amarillo requires approximately 2 weeks to mobilize. And that is because they'd be pulling folks off of existing jobs to bring them back to Bolton, and they're involved in multiple projects across the state. We will be speaking tomorrow regarding our next steps on the utility. In effect, if we don't have a date within the next few days and don't have agreement from Verizon to have the wires moved by mid-October, it is looking highly, highly unlikely that the work would be completed within this calendar year. It's a combination of factors. The asphalt plants will be closing in mid-November, and some of the remaining work is temperature sensitive. But again, it's Verizon. And the delay is affecting the contingency that we're carrying for the project. You always carry contingency, you just don't want to spend it. But there are escalation costs built in for asphalt as well as signage rental.
Marie, are there any I guess additional leverage points or voices that can be brought to bear in this conversation to pressure Verizon to move?
I have been in conversation with the representative's office for Verizon. We have tried alternate points of contact that Amarillo knows, as well as the DPW director, and that I know on the municipal side. Verizon had initially stated that it appeared the other vendors, Comcast and National Grid, had not moved their wires. We've since provided proof in terms of their construction scheduling system, and then they have been silent. My hope is that we have an answer and we have a date. The board is aware that there is a subsequent poll hearing for later this month. Some municipalities have taken the approach that unless XYZ is done, whether that XYZ is removal of double poles or response to, construction scheduling, they will not entertain any proposals for, any jointly owned poles.
Mhm. Okay.
So stay tuned. We will have at least some approach, and I'll be relaying my recommendation should we hear nothing from Verizon for the upcoming poll hearing.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
All right. On the Forbush Road, stream crossing improvements, again, they've submitted everything to DOT and they're still awaiting the approval. The Wilder Road reclamation and paving bids will be coming in the middle of the month. Everyone hopefully has heard that the DOT will be engaging in closing down the bridge at Still River as of 8 p.m. Friday, and it will be closed, reopening 2 weeks later on Friday, the 17th. The detour plan is up on the website. There have been multiple news and announcements. Any questions that individuals have should be relayed to the email address on the screen, dot.feedbackdistrict3. And they're prepared to answer residents' questions. We've had a series of, at this point, 3 meetings with the public safety chiefs, the regional school district administration, as well as the town administration with DOT, and I'm hoping this goes smoothly. Something that has moved up from sort of staffing and operations to a project is the public water supply. As you're aware, we're still under the boil water order. We'd recently contracted with Ty and Bond to scope proposals for both a temporary, i.e. interim, and permanent disinfection in response to DEP's boil water order. It might seem silly as to why we're going through this first temporary and then permanent. Temporary would be a much smaller scale. for concurrent disinfection happening in the library as well as in the public safety building. Any permanent disinfection requires DEP's approval and advocacy for funding. We will be submitting our corrective action plan to DEP, though, in the coming days. I've provided the board the tie and bond contracted scope of work. Reminder to everyone, polls will be open at the high school on Monday from noon to 8 p.m., encouraging individuals to go and cast a ballot. Officer Hector Martinez Rivera was sworn in as a full-time patrol officer on September 24th. He will be coming to a select board meeting later this fall. I'm aware that the police department Facebook page has provided multiple photos of the swearing-in ceremony that was happening at Town Hall. As the planning director had alluded to, she had submitted a grant application for Long Hill Road traffic calming in conjunction with input from the DPW director and the Public Waste Safety Committee. The planning director is the amazing coordinator, cross coordinator of needs in the town and sort of matching that need to a grant. And as she'd relayed, we're awaiting info regarding our grant proposal for housing production. To questions regarding, well, what happens if the ambulance isn't available? Chief Legendre is working with his counterpart in Lancaster to provide, if it's reimbursed by DOT, temporary daytime ALS coverage in Lancaster, looking at potentially placing the fly car there during the work hours of the bridge closure. We aren't yet aware of what the traffic delay would be. I'm sure that people have seen the detour route. As you know, we are the ALS provider for the contiguous towns, and we're just trying to plan for worst possible case scenario of extensive delays in order to assist Lancaster. For IT upgrades, I want to give a shout out to Jenny, who has been diligently posting many intriguing things on the Facebook page, and our subscriber account on Facebook has increased 5% during September. Our website transition will be going live in a few months. We'd received notice that we'll actually have an interim version for internal staff on the project to view within the month of October. We've also been indebted to the assistance of volunteer Don Cole during that process. And the town is seeking residents' photos of scenic Bolton for use. If you have a fun photo you'd like to provide, please go to the select board page and click on the link. Capital planning requests for the town departments were distributed last week, and responses will be due at the end of October. And also, as an alert, the recreation coordinator's scheduled hours have been revised to reflect the seasonality of her workload. In effect, the early fall is not quite as heavy a workload as subsequent months as camp comes into play. And camp is obviously, the full-time 40 hours a week. You may have seen notices and flyers posted that the commission is planning 2 events this month. Tunes at Twilight on Friday, the 17th from 6 to 8 on the town common. And of course, the traditional trick-or-treat lane on Saturday, October 25th, starting at 2:30 at Memorial Field. I've registered to staff a table and look forward to seeing individuals come by, or perhaps a select board member could spell me for a while if it's cold. Under financial, as mentioned earlier, in the absence of DEP's approval of our temporary disinfection approach, we don't know exactly whether they would go with our very scaled down approach. Regardless, we're projecting for the temporary disinfection approximately $95,000 for this unforeseen issue. This presently has been paid out of the public buildings maintenance line. It's expected that a reserve fund transfer request, should have put request, will be forthcoming later this fall. We'd received notice of our cannabis 3% excise tax receipts for the period of June through August. That was $8,900. This was approximately half of what we had expected. And our insurer, Mass Interlocal Insurance Association, relayed their projected conservative budget recommendations when we had met with them. They had said, being conservative, because it's always worse to, go in too low and then you're in a terrific squeeze. Approximately 7 to 8% increase for property liability, 15% for health insurance. As I'd mentioned in the last town administrator report, I was attending a Mass Municipal Association conference. It was fascinating to hear from the director of the Group Insurance Commission, the Maya Benefits Trust, as well as CHIA, the State Center for Health Information, that in their estimation of looking back at the drivers for health insurance costs, it's largely beyond local control. The larger organizations are looking at changes to prescription coverage for the GLP weight loss drugs and hoping that that moves the lever. What they have seen, especially CHIA, is that it's actually the cost itself with the utilization across outpatient services as well as inpatient is not dramatically increasing. Inpatient stays are longer, perhaps indicating a sicker population, but this perfect storm of variables is converging, and individuals, everyone in the audience wanted to know, well, what can I do in my town? And they were not unduly optimistic.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yep.
Um, has Mia given us projections in the past, and how accurate have they been? I think we've only been with them for a year or two, right?
Right. We had this is going into our second year, and you're catching me, so I don't know what they'd projected for last year. I know that we were caught within the plan average, though, in terms of our health insurance. At this point, we have 1 year's worth of claims experience. But if you're looking at the market overall increasing 15%, we would probably be in that 15%.
So the projections that you mentioned, were those specific to Bolton, or were those their sort of general projections for Massachusetts towns?
The representative who provided that was discussing Bolton, but I can't tell if she was just pattern matching across Massachusetts, as she wasn't sharing, given our small size, any specific utilization info for our enrollees.
Just a little bit of context on the way Maya does this. So every year, like in January around Martin Luther King Day week, they release a range, and there's like a low end and a high end, and then what they call the trust average. So like the low end will be the community that gets the best rates will be at the low end of their scale, and the communities that get the highest rates are at the high. Typically, like this time of year, if they're going out and saying budget conservatively for 15%, that's probably close to the high end of their range, but it tells me that they're expecting their trust average to be probably double digits anyway, like at least 10%. So I think it's going to be a rough year for a lot of communities. Any other questions for Marie about her town administrator report?
Nope,
Great, thank you, Marie.
Thank you.
thanks.
Okay, select board business. Any public service announcements from you, Kate?
Nope, not for me.
I think Marie already mentioned it, but just a quick reminder that you can vote in person on Monday between 12 and 8. So please go vote in our local election.
You know what? And I did lie. I do have a public service announcement.
Okay.
The townwide yard sale is this weekend, on Saturday, generally speaking, from 9 to 4. There's information online from Bolton Local. There's a map that everybody can access to see which houses in town are doing yard sales. Mine is included. Please come buy my stuff. So, it's a great opportunity to get out there and recycle and reuse.
Great, that's a good one. Future agenda items.
Nothing tonight.
Me neither. I have no select board reports at this time, or at least the one that I have will get rolled into a future or an item later on the agenda. Anything from you, Kate?
No.
Okay, next is review and consider draft handbook for appointed and elected officials. First, let me say thank you very much to Kate, and I know there were lots of folks at Town Hall, including Marie and Jenny and Jen Marquis, who were involved. So what we have is we have a lengthy draft handbook for basically people that are members of boards, commissions, and committees. I have reviewed the whole document. I had one bit of feedback for your consideration, Kate, which is that I love the first part. I liked Appendix A and I liked Appendix C. I think Appendix B is a bear, and I would actually suggest that we maybe just not include it as like, I don't think we need to list out all of that stuff and just direct people to the website. I don't know what you think of that.
Yeah, it's been a little unwieldy to work on, and I haven't had time to do it. What I do like about it, and just so people know what we're talking about, I basically did a one-pager for every single board and commission in town that it puts the statement of the mission and, when it meets and who the members are and how the members are elected or appointed. And just a lot of basic information so that if people were interested in the position, it was sort of a one-stop shop for getting information. But I think there might be a way to incorporate that on the website going forward. So I would be completely okay with taking that out.
Okay, yeah, I think we should, and then it also just means that we're not, because the details of like when a commission or board might meet could change. We don't have to be updating a static document. So that was my one suggestion, is that we take out Appendix B. And then my other suggestion is more just a timing thing, which is I think it might be nice to give whoever is elected on Monday an opportunity to also review, since it'll be issued by the select board and we just have like a week to wait for that. So are you okay if we give the new member of the select board an opportunity to review it before we vote to approve?
That is fine.
Great. Well, thank you. It was talk about a labor of love. Next up is discuss draft capital stabilization fund policy. And I know we have Bob Guerrero, the chair of our advisory committee. So just to tee this up for folks, Kate and I both attended a recent meeting of the advisory committee where the committee was reviewing a draft capital stabilization fund policy. I think one of the things that we discussed, although I don't know if we decided officially, was that rather than approving a standalone policy now, maybe we need to weave it into the existing set of policies and potentially edit a couple of those other policies to make sure that they reflect whatever the stabilization fund policy ends up being. But I'd invite Bob Guerrero to share any thoughts or recommendations that he might want to give to.
Right, no, that was a good recap, Brian. The only other thing I'd mention is we had talked about some potential funding sources for the fund, and we had discussed having one maybe fixed revenue source, which could be some subset of the local receipts. And in addition, we might add funds to the fund, maybe to kind of jumpstart it a little bit. And we would try to identify those, going forward.
What is the process going forward for advisory on like finalizing the policy and maybe updating other policies that are implicated?
Well, I think we would certainly be happy to consider a policy if Marie wanted to finish putting together what she had started. If conversely, if you'd like advisory to take it over and maybe incorporate it into the one of the existing policies, we could do that too. I mean, I'm open to either approach.
Marie, do you have a,
I'd be happy to sort of add some tweaks and then take it back to advisory at your next meeting and find out when you want to schedule it. You know what I mean? And also do you wish to put it in with your stabilization policies, with your capital process or whatnot?
Okay, no, that sounds great.
okay, then actually, Marie, could I follow up with you separately on that just to stay in the loop on the actual document itself?
That would be fine.
Okay. Kate, did you have any comments or questions about the policy that you wanted to raise now, or?
No, I just wanted to say that I think it's a good idea to make it a percentage of local receipts. And I'm wondering, since we do have some new restaurants in town, whether we would be expecting a significant increase in the meals taxes. And from my perspective, like just for my personal budgeting, if I take away money, new money coming in and budget it somewhere, I don't miss it. So it seems like if we can expect those local receipts to be going up, that's a really easy place to take money and put it into the stabilization fund that we're already not counting on for operations.
Mm-hmm. Yep, makes sense. Okay. Well, we will keep following up on this. Next item is related to accepting the quit claim deed for land and easements located at Moderator Way. Marie, since I have you here, would you mind giving a little overview of this?
Sure. The Law Committee over the summer had accepted a settlement agreement and release. This was a merging of two civil actions. One was the Keys Farm civil action against the town of Bolton, and the town's civil action to the developer. This became a consolidated action. There had been a proposed settlement offered. The law committee had reviewed the settlement agreement, had made some modifications, and this was accepted. Tonight is a first step. The board is being asked to vote to accept the deed per the settlement agreement. The reason for doing that tonight is that it would avoid any title issues and likewise any contention that the town is in breach of the agreement. For those just joining the story, do you want to assure them likewise that we'd received settlement funds? As a practical matter for the deed acceptance, what this means is that the town would be the owner of Moderator Way. It would be responsible for the upkeep and the maintenance even prior to its acceptance. Ideally, we would be accepting this should all results come back as a public way in the spring of 26. We have confirmed and covered with our insurance carrier. And at this point, this is one of two steps that the board would be required to perform.
Step one being we take title now, and then step two being that it's accepted as a public way by the town.
Correct. To advance an article should, the as-built, et cetera, layout plans and drainage, et cetera, all be fine. So,
Okay, and then if I was looking at the updated version of our agenda, I think there's two things tonight that we want to do. One is the vote to accept the quitclaim deed, and then the other is you do need a vote tonight to approve expenditures associated with Moderator Way, correct?
right, some of that and the expenditures and the source of those expenditures would be the settlement that we'd received. By virtue of Mass General Finance laws, we received the settlement, we deposited it into our general fund. as required. As such, though, we cannot spend from the general fund until it's appropriated by town meeting. Due to the amazing efforts of the Director of Planning, she located an earlier town meeting vote that Bolton had made in 2019, which allowed us to meet the costs and expenses of the town to complete the work. If and it's a very long alphabet soup of Mass General Law sections and subsections, so long as the proceeds received do not exceed 100,000, they did not, and provided the expenditure is approved by the Select Board. Ergo, we are also asking the Select Board's approval of expenditures to cover the work for the completion of the as-built, the setting bounds, the layout plans, drainage inspection, and associated work on the detention ponds.
Okay. And so just for everybody's awareness, we have in our meeting packet a copy of a quit claim deed that covers land and easements located at Moderator Way. And so I think we could act on that first and then have a separate motion related to expenditure approvals.
Yeah, I will make a motion to approve the quitclaim deed from Keys Farm LLC to the town of Bolton for the land and easements located on Moderator Way.
And I will second that. Roll call, Kate.
Yes,
I'm also a yes.
all right. And well, I'll try this one and you can tell me if you don't like it, Marie. I'll make a motion to approve expenditures to cover the balance of the work remaining for the items to complete the work at Moderator Way
Um,
From the settlement total.
from the settlement total.
Yeah.
and I will second that. Roll call, Kate,
Yes.
and I'm also a yes. Marie, I think that gives you what you need, right?
Yes, we will begin contracting for the outstanding work, and then I will be reaching out to the residents of Moderator to inform them of tonight's votes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next item is we were going to review and potentially vote on a memorandum of agreement related to the Neshoba Cadet EMT program. Marie, do you want to just give a quick bullet overview of what it is that we're being asked to consider? Oh, I should mention at the outset. Sorry. We are still waiting final review of this MOA from town council. So while I think Kate and I can ask questions, I don't want to take a vote tonight because I want to hear back from council.
Okay. I also see that we have Ken Troop. Wanted to say that Ken, as well as representatives of the district and the fire chief, have been working to update the MOA. With the earlier version had expired. I believe that this had been reviewed with a fine-tooth comb and more specificity had been added. Subsequently, this had been shared, and the district, as well as our insurer, has taken another look at it. I had spoken with district representatives this afternoon just to confirm some of the alterations that our insurer had suggested. And I had resent to the district as well as Mr. Troop, as well as to the fire chief, and then shared with the select board the edited version with, again, the caveat that our council had said not until Friday afternoon. So
Well, thank you. And I had a chance to meet with Ken Troop, I guess it was in September, and we talked quite a bit about this. So I'm aware of what the goals of the MOA are. Kate, did you have any questions about what you've had a chance to review so far?
I actually also had a conversation with Ken last week, so I'm also familiar with this. The only comment that I had on the revised draft that came through late this afternoon is I'm wondering if we could make it a little bit, there's one language change I'd like to see on the Bolton Fire EMS responsibilities. which is on the first bullet point where it says accommodate utilization of cadet EMTs. I'd like to use language like either encourage or support, or maybe support utilization of the cadets. I really just want to stress that, how valuable the experience is that the cadets get from being on site and working. So, but other than that, I didn't have any comments.
I like changing the word accommodate to support. Marie, is that doable?
I will shop it around with the other signatories because I'm trying to keep everyone in the same loop. Like, does this
Yeah.
look good?
Ken, I don't know if you're trying to say something, but you're on mute.
Sorry about that. No, I was just gonna say you should make sure to run it by the chief. I don't think anyone else would have any issues with that word, but it was he who chose the chose that language, and so you would want to discuss that with him some.
Cool.
The one other thing, I did review the revision that you sent out, Marie, and the one suggestion that I would have, because it's basically redundant, is to remove the sentence in the first paragraph that talks about renewing it annually, and then just leave that in the
Last
back
sentence.
the way you have it written,
Okay.
and then there's no conflict.
Okay.
And it doesn't change anybody's view of it anyway.
Yep.
And I would think that even if it is annual, that it's kind of on the judgment of everybody, and if they look at it and say, hey, this is fine, then they don't have to make a big deal out of changing it. Unless there's something major that needs to go in it.
That makes sense.
Want to raise one component under the town of Bolton's responsibility was to provide a select board liaison to the cadet EMT advisory. So I don't know, this is just something for board members to keep in their head as likely an easier decision then as I continue shopping the revised versions around.
Yeah, and there's no rush on that. It's just it would be an appropriate thing.
All right, sounds good. Well, no further questions from me. I guess we'll just wait for the finalized version. Ken, thank you for all your work on this.
Okay, well, we're glad to move it on through. So I think personally, I think the way the current version is written is fine. But I understand the need to clarify some of the things on the insurance side. The schools looked into that somewhat, and I think I liked what they wrote in there about applying whatever they do for other students or something like that. I think that was okay. The one thing that is not written in there that I need to get a clarification on from them, though, is since they have a cell phone ban in the school, then when a student is allowed to be on call, then they need to use the phone, because that's the way that they're now notified. The EMTs as well as cadets used to carry pagers that were supplied by the town, but nobody uses pagers anymore. They use an app that is on the phone, and all the cadets have that and all the EMTs have that. But obviously, if you don't have your phone, it doesn't help you. So we'll have to make sure that they have dispensation on the days that they're actually on calls.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
No trouble.
Thanks, Ken.
Okay. Next on our agenda is following up some next steps from the advisory meeting that you and I attended, Kate. I guess it was last week. And I actually can share my screen. So Kate, let me just tee this up for you. So I think, as you might recall, Bob Guerrero at that meeting raised the concept of essentially coordinating or discussing with the other member towns, trying to propose like a not to exceed amount when it comes to the assessment, the operating assessment.
Yeah.
So I drafted a letter that would be going to the members of the Lancaster Select Board and Finance Committee and the Stowe Select Board and Finance Committee.
Mhm.
It would be from myself and from Bob. And it's basically a proposal to have that joint discussion. And so I'll share, I'm going to ask you to do a little lawyerly speed reading because I don't think this was sent to you in advance. But can you see this document?
It has been sent to me during the meeting.
Oh, have you?
So I have already sped read.
Okay, so I don't need to share my screen. You've already read it.
Yeah, I was just at the end of it, but yeah, no, I understand exactly where you're going with it, and I am in full agreement.
Okay, so you are you're in support of my sending out that letter.
Absolutely, no, I think that it's the biggest financial issue facing the town is how to be able to continue to provide quality education and while still juggling the needs of the town as a whole. And I think these are the right steps we need to be taking to make sure that the school understands clearly what constraints we are operating under and what's going to be acceptable to the town. And I think doing it with the other member towns of the regional school district, so we're all on the same page. I think those are the right moves.
Okay, well then we will get this out tomorrow. Thank you. Last item is approve bills / payroll warrants W26-7.
I'll make a motion to approve the payroll warrants.
And I will second that. Roll call, Kate.
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. We have no minutes for tonight. And so then I would just, I'm looking at Marie to make sure there's nothing that I'm missing. Great. I would take a motion to adjourn.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
And I will second that. Roll call, Kate.
Yes.
I'm also a yes. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Marie. Thanks, Bob. Have a good
Thank
night.
you. Good night.
Good
Bye,
night.